the chat. It's right up to the right.
I will do.
All right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today's going to be a fairly quick show because Mr. Hemant here has some family obligations that he has to go and take care of. So we're going to get through this as quick as we can. And unfortunately, he won't be able to join us in an after party, but we're still going to have one anyways if you guys want to come and hang out. And we can go from there and chat about whatever. But anyways, Hemant, usually what I do here is I talk to people about their deconversion stories.
Cool.
So I guess we kind of have to make this a quick one. So why don't you take us back as far as you can remember when you were once a believer and the journey that kind of took you on to becoming the absolutely fantastic atheist activist that you are today.
Oh, thank you. Sure. So the basic story for me is I was raised in a religion called Jainism, so a smaller Indian religion.
Cool.
They have their own supernatural aspects to it.
Sure.
But for the most part, the philosophy is like nonviolence, and that's all well and good. But I think when I was like 14-ish, I started questioning religion for the first time, which I didn't realize was a thing you could do. I'm sure many people have had that experience. And this is around the time that like the internet for me was a new thing. And so I think I remember going to like, what happens if you type in online, what happens if you don't believe in God and things like that. And so all you would find though are weird little chat rooms or like websites clearly made by guys who lived in their basement somewhere. And you know what I mean? Like it all seems sketchy.
The picture is there.
Yeah. I like read that stuff and I'm like, weird. This stuff kind of makes a lot of sense. And it wasn't anybody else pulling me in that direction. It was just me like questioning the stuff and realizing, I think this makes a lot more sense than whatever it is I believe. And the more I read about it, the more I was pretty convinced that it wasn't like my religion's wrong and another one is right. It was my religion is wrong and religion is wrong. And so
in general.
Yeah. And so it wasn't something I really talked about because I still thought of it as like a bad thing. But, you know, during high school for me, it was like, oh yeah, like, I don't think I believe in God. And then I started finding friends who also felt along the same lines as that.
Sure.
And in college, I had a chance I was like, I want to meet other atheists because I didn't really have a good way of doing that. I'm trying to make a long story short here, but I started a group with a girl who was in one of my classes. Weird story. I like emailed a professor, like the one, if you search atheist on my college's website, it led to one like essay written by a professor. Turned out he was a grad student at the time. And I'm like, hey, would you be a faculty sponsor? Because I want to start a group, but I don't know what else to do, but I need a faculty sponsor. And he said, basically, I'm going to be leaving this college soon because he'll do whatever it is he does. But he's like, weird thing, another student emailed me about the same thing, wanting to start a group. Why don't I put you two in touch and you'll figure it out? And so he did. And it turned out that was someone who was in one of my classes who I had never really talked to. But she actually was a volunteer at Camp Quest, which was a summer camp for students. It's still going strong now. And she actually knew more about like the landscape of how do you start a group? Who do you affiliate with? Things like that. She said, let's start a group. We can affiliate with the Secular Student Alliance, the Center for Inquiry, and they have resources we can use. And with her help, we were able to get one started on our campus. I got more involved with both of those organizations, actually. And that's kind of how I got started on my path to activism. All the blogging stuff came, we're talking about like 2003, 2004, all this stuff I'm talking about. I didn't start the website and all that for several years after all that. So that's kind of how I got started.
The one on Pathos is the one you're referring to, correct?
Yeah, whatever the predecessor to like Friendly Atheist was its own thing, and then Pathos came much later. But yeah, so I didn't start with that stuff until a few years later. But that's kind of how I got involved with all this stuff.
Sure. Okay. So why did you decide to settle on the moniker The Friendly Atheist?
You know, in retrospect, I don't like the name because it's not that it's not that I'm friendly. You
seem to be.
Maybe, but like, it's always one of those things. If I say something critical, someone on Twitter or whatever will always write back like, well, that wasn't very friendly of you. And it's like, it's hard to say anything critical of a sacred cow anyone has.
Yeah,
There's no nice way to tell you you've dedicated your life to a lie. So I don't love that name. But the reason I started it is because at the time, so we're talking whatever, 2006, 2007, those new atheist books were either not out yet or about to come out. Anytime you saw atheists in the news at all for anything, it was always, every time, every article was like an angry atheist, an alleged atheist, a militant atheist, aggressive. It's like, I've met some of these people because now I've been working with a lot of these organizations, and they're always pretty nice. I mean, they're normal in any case. And I'm like, well, fine. If I need a name for a website, and I had to come up with one really quick for some reason or another. I'm like, I'm gonna make you say friendly, mostly because everyone I meet is nice. And like, if nothing else, if you're gonna mention me somewhere, I'm gonna make you say friendly atheist. That's kind of where that started, and it honestly has nothing to do with me trying to be nice.
Well, from everything that I've ever witnessed of you, like I've read your blog multiple times, many of the stories that you've written, because you're one of like 4 of my favorite authors on Pathos.
Oh, thank you.
You and Godless Mom and my friend Andy Hall and a couple others.
Yeah.
And I've always seen that you've always been a pretty amicable human being. Like, you've always been a decent guy, like, especially like, and I've seen you on Twitter. I don't usually chime into a lot of these things, but a lot of times I've seen you in sort of a discussion, we'll say, with other tweeters, and you're very cordial. So,
well, thank you. I mean,
even if
for
things
the
go
most
wrong,
part, I try to make sure I know who I'm arguing with and what I'm arguing against. So I don't know, anyone who's followed me for a long time knows I don't spend a lot of time trying to argue people out of their belief in God. I don't, honestly, I care a lot less now than I did before about trying to convince people to be atheists. And I think,
normal.
Yeah, I think what means a lot to me now is, let's talk about how religion is used to do really bad things, whether it's politics or something like that. And so it's like, no, if I'm going to be angry, if I'm going to pick a fight with you about something, I'll try to save it for that stuff where I feel like most of the people, at least the type who would follow me, it's like, yeah, we're all kind of on the same page with this, if nothing else.
Okay.
And honestly, because people will say dumb things all the time on the internet, you can't pick a fight with everybody. So I try to save my outrage for what I think deserves it. And honestly, with Twitter and things like that, there are plenty of times I might want to pick a fight with someone, but it's like, no, you're not worth me getting myself worked up about this. Like, I'm going to ignore you. And I'll at least try to save it for people where it's like, oh, this person is worth picking a fight over.
Yeah. Someone you should get into it with.
Yeah. And I totally fail my own test many times. I'm sure I've done it like in the past 24 hours repeatedly, where it's like, why am I engaging? That was stupid.
Yeah. And then you just end up going up to the little corner there and mute conversation.
Yep. I use mute with so many people. I don't block, but I will mute the hell out of everybody. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have something else that's kind of out of the whole deconversion thing. You were a Jeopardy champion, sir.
I was. Yeah.
How did you end up doing that?
It's one of those things where I've been trying to get on the show forever, not obsessively, as I found out, not as much as some people, but like I've taken, there's an online test you could take. And at the time you could take it once or twice a year, maybe. And so for several years, I would take this online test, like 30 minutes one night, and they just ask you question after question. And it's fast enough, like the time limit on answering the questions is fast enough that it's really hard to Google anything if you're eager to do that. So I took it, and then I never heard anything, which either means I failed, or maybe I did well, but so did everybody, and then they randomly picked people for the next step. And so I never heard anything, but last year, maybe last January, I took it, and I got an email from them saying, hey, you've been chosen to come for an in-person audition in Chicago on some date. And I remember looking at that date saying, like, crap, I'm going to be out of town that weekend. But if you look at the email, it said, if you can't make it, email us, like respond to this email and we'll see what we could do. And I wrote them and I'm like, I'm going to be gone for a trip. Like, is there anything else I can do? Or is that I just got to wait again. And they wrote back and they're like, hey, if you can't make it in Chicago, we're maybe going to be in Milwaukee later in the year. Do you want us to just reach out to you when that time comes? I'm like, yes, I would love that. Totally thinking they're never going to reach out again. I've already wasted their time. But they did. They emailed me and said, hey, we're in Milwaukee on this date. Can you come? I'm like, yes, I'm there. I drove up a few hours to Milwaukee. And basically, that was an in-person audition where you took another test so they know you didn't cheat online. They played a mock game where they kind of said to you, we don't actually care how you do. We know you're all smart. You answered 2 tests now. We just want to see how you look when you answer questions, because there are people where like you give them a buzzer and you ask them a question. If you answer something wrong, you can imagine some people are like, damn it, and it's like, oh, you are not going to work on TV at all.
It's all about composure.
Yeah, you just want to like, oh, I got something wrong. All right, well, I'll keep a smile on my face. I will get it right the next time. And just they want to see you. And that was kind of it. Like it went by really fast. You took the test, you played a mock game, you did a little banter with them back and forth, the producers there. We're all in the same room, by the way, together. So you're watching everybody go through the same audition. And then we left. And they kind of said to everybody, we might, if we want you on the show, we'll call you anytime between now and 18 months from now, but probably never.
It's like a cable guy.
Yeah, like maybe we'll call you and you can't, like, there's nothing else you could do. There's nowhere to reach us. We'll reach out to you. And if you don't hear from us a year and a half from now, try again. And there were people at that audition who said, this is like the 6th time I've come for an in-person audition, and I'm hoping this is the time. And it's like, oh my God.
Wow.
But they called. I was shocked. They called and they said, you're going to tape on this date. Like rearrange whatever your schedule is. So we taped at the end of January. I kept my mouth shut for 2 months, and it aired earlier in April. And I won 1 game. It was awesome. And then I lost in my 2nd game.
I actually watched them. You did quite well, even on the 2nd game. But
thank you. Yeah, I at least was in a position in the 2nd game to win. I didn't know the final Jeopardy answer. Someone else did. She won. She deserved it.
I know. I was screaming at the screen.
I'm sure everyone was. It was one of those things where I'm like, as I won 1 game, so I have so little to complain about. And the whole experience was just so cool. Like you dream about doing something like that. You hope you don't become a meme for all the wrong reasons, because there's no do-overs on any of that stuff. And you're like, if I give a wrong answer, I hope it's just not a stupid wrong answer.
Right.
And so like it was a cool experience. I don't think I embarrassed myself as badly as I might have thought. And it was awesome. Like I'm actually still kind of like Facebook friends with a few of the people I played against, with some of the people who were there that week. Like it was very cool. Like it was an unbelievable experience to be in a room with like a dozen people, because they taped 1 million episodes in 1 day. And you're in a room full of people. We're all living out like a dream come true.
There must have been a rush.
Yeah, it was that cool rush. And also like most of us are going to walk away losing, and we're all going to like have our dreams crushed. But
you were on Jeopardy.
But we're on Jeopardy. But like all of us are going to, because you have to imagine all dozen of us who were there that day, all of us have been told at some point in our lives by people close to us, like, you should be on Jeopardy. You would be amazing on Jeopardy. And like, at least 9 or 10 of these people are going to walk away losers. And like, they're all smart. So like, they're all going to walk away, and maybe they have a bad game. And it's like, there's so much luck involved with when you get picked and what you don't know what questions they're going to ask. So it's like, oh man, these smart people didn't get a chance to show it, And so you just kind of hope you get lucky in terms of what they ask and who you're up against. Like my fear going into it was like, I don't know who the returning champion is, because they tape about 2 months in advance. They could say, all right, this is our returning champion. It's a 90-game winner with $4 million, and you're all going to lose this week. Like all of you. That was my huge fear. I'm like, oh my God, Ken Jennings is going to be here, and I don't even know it. And we got lucky that it was just, it was a normal winner. Someone won. They came back. They lost the first game. Like we all have a chance. So it was a cool experience.
Very cool. Did you get to meet and talk with Alex?
Only what you see on TV. Like, they have very strict rules because, like, he knows the questions in advance. So honestly, the only interaction I had with him was the very brief interview he does with you on the show, and the very quick banter that you have after the game is over, and they roll the credits on the show. So you see Alex talking to the contestants, and then he walks away to the chamber that he goes back to, and that is the only interaction we had with him at all. The only thing I got to experience that I don't think anyone else gets to see is the show is taped in real time. Like, it went by fast, but the commercial breaks are actually much longer. So they can the producers talk to you, make sure your buzzer's working, give you a little pep talk to all of us, give you water. But Alex Trebek during that time is answering questions from the audience. And
oh, wow, cool.
He was so much fun to watch interacting with everybody else, because they're all asking him questions. I'm sure he's been asked the same stuff a million times.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so they would be like, who do you want to replace you on the show, if you retire? And he's like, oh, I want someone young and spry like Betty White. And he was just having the time of his life, just being, I think someone said, do you have a favorite episode that you have taped in all your years of doing this? And he's just like, yes. Then walks away back to the podium.
Not even going any further.
Not even going. He was just having fun with them, and like, it was cool just watching from a cool vantage point.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
When I found out and saw you on there, I was like, wow. All right. Yeah, go Atheists.
I was hoping, like, I remember the first half of the game, for the first game I played, I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. This is a nightmare. But then they asked about crossword puzzles, crossword clues for the second half, and I'm like, I got this. Yeah. And they asked about Bible questions in the second game, which cracked me up. That was hilarious. Yeah. I'm like, I know the Bible. We're good.
Yeah. This is my wheelhouse.
Yes.
Watch me rock this one.
Yeah.
Well, I played a game online on a friend of mine's channel called Atheist or Jeopardy or whatever. So, and he asked a bunch of questions like that, and I won one round. And
very nice. You know what's weird? All the people who are on there, like, they all play pub trivia and they have trivia things, and I'm like, I don't do that very much at all. Like, I wish I did. It would be like, I am not as obsessed with trivia. I realized I thought I was clearly not, because everyone else is way more into it.
Well, the pub trivia I've done, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I wish I could go out, period. But like, I wish I could do it regularly.
Yeah, for sure. How much more time do we got?
Whatever you want. We got time.
Well, really?
I have until 50 after, so we're good.
50 after? Oh, 50. I thought you said 15 after.
No, we're good. We're good. We got some time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now we've heard about the Jeopardy. We've heard about the deconversion, as short as the story as it was.
Yeah.
What are some of the activities, or not activities, like holidays, that kind of thing, that are involved with Jainism? Because that one's always intrigued me.
Yeah. So so here's the weird thing. My parents celebrated, they're Jains. There's a temple outside of Chicago, so we would go there frequently. But I found out, like, some of their theology doesn't necessarily match the textbook Jain theology. Because, like, for example, I was raised to believe God exists, and my parents would talk about God as if God exists. And it was only much later I realized Jainism doesn't actually believe in a creator God. Like, they believe in the supernatural. There are supernatural deities, but there's no, like, creator God. And that was like, wait, did we get that wrong the whole time? Because I feel like my whole inner circle believes in God. But okay. But in terms of religion, I think the biggest one is there's an 8-day kind of like, this is a bad comparison for any person listening, like Hanukkah, where it's just a long, week-long, drawn-out sort of thing. It's called Peryushin, but you're supposed to fast during those 8 days, or at least maybe water that has gone through a ritual process first.
My stomach's already rumbling.
Yeah. And like, for the kids, they would say, okay, you're supposed to eat once a day, but like, the idea of fasting is there. It's a way to give thanks. It's a way to pay homage, to be grateful for what you have, sort of thing. There is a religious component to it, but for the most part, because I always grew up in communities where when I was younger, there was no temple. And at one point in my childhood, we moved to an area where there were no other Jains, period. And so you kind of had to makeshift your way through religious rituals. So a lot of times what my family did is we knew other Jains in the community, so they would get together once a month to pray, but really it was a social gathering. And they still do that to this day. Our circle of family friends is still like the religious group that still meets together. And I'm tight with all of them, you know what I mean? So in terms of rituals, I feel like the temple now has grown to a point where they have their version of Sunday school. They have things much more organized than existed when I was younger in the community. But but like my parents are both still very religious, so I'm probably not a good Jain scholar to ask about that sort of stuff.
Well, here's an interesting thing that somebody put in the chat here. I've seen the nude Jain aesthetics in India while visiting the Buddhist sites back then. What is that about? Do you know what you're talking about? Or? So
there are sects of Jainism, different denominations of Jainism. The one that I think that person is talking about, where they don't wear any clothes, because you're supposed to be not materialistic and you're not supposed to want for anything. If you want to eat food, it's usually food people give you if you're a monk. You know what I mean? And so there are monks that I have heard of who don't wear clothes either for that reason. That is not the sect I belong to. So all the monks and nuns we met, or our versions of them, were always clothed. And if they came to someone's house to do anything or to lead a prayer session, they were always clothed too. So the nude aspect of Jainism is not one that I ever grew up in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And usually that sort of thing was only reserved for the monks, like the priests, the ones who devote their lives to it, not necessarily just the lay people who belong to the tradition. Right.
Now, I'm not sure what it's like for a Jain to leave the religion. Was there any like your family? Did they get upset or anything like that? Like, was there any?
It wasn't a religious upset so much. Like I had it easy. Don't get me wrong on that. Like there are some religions where you can't leave. They're going to pressure you to stay and all that. Mine were more culturally upset because when you're saying I don't believe in this stuff anymore, it feels like you're turning your back on the culture. You know what I mean? Like, we don't like Indian people anymore. We see how it is. It's like, no, it's not that. And so it was more trying to explain to them, no, here's what it means when I don't believe in God. Like, I don't think they understood it first. It's more of a philosophical thing and less of a, because Jainism is about nonviolence. And are you turning your back on that? It's like, no, I'm fine with that. Jainism in practice for us meant you're vegetarian because you're not supposed to kill other animals, just like you shouldn't kill other people. I'm still vegetarian because that makes sense to me philosophically, even if there's no religious component to it. And I think once my parents realized, I'm the same person I was like yesterday.
I don't hold the beliefs.
Yeah, like it's not something they were bragging about, but I think they've come to accept it mildly. It's just like, it's one of his things. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's
like
not something we fight about. We actually have a fine relationship. It's just one of those, like, we don't talk about it.
Right.
And we just talk about other things because whatever, we're family. There's a million other things and I have kids of my own. So like all of our conversations now revolve around like my kids and them. I'm out of the picture anyway. So
you're old news.
Exactly.
They got the new ones now.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes they're like, we're going to take them to Sunday school at the temple. It's like, you want to watch the kids, you do whatever you want. It's not a big deal. I don't even care.
Have you had a discussion with the kids about that? Like, your parents may. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Right. And mostly because when they go to Sunday school, it's really not the sort of what I would consider brainwashing sort of Sunday school that some people go to. They're not learning like evolution is wrong. Here's what's actually, it's not that sort of thing. It's more general principles, like the nonviolence thing. It's like, all right.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. Right. And so I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 4-year-old's not quite at the age where we would have those discussions, but I'm sure it'll come soon.
Oh yeah, eventually. Yeah. I'm sure it will. They might have questions already forming in their head.
Right.
And when they feel comfortable, I guess, talking to you about it, they probably will for sure.
Right.
I mean,
Well, hopefully.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was adopted as a baby. I was born to a couple different denomination Christian couple who ended up getting married and having 2 more kids because I met them back in 2000. And I was raised Jewish though. So, so it's kind of one of those kind of weird, odd sort of things where, if I hadn't been adopted, I would have been raised Christian and know nothing about Judaism. Right. So as soon as you, well, I probably wouldn't have known nothing. I would have friends, I'm sure.
But it's so much about your environment that you're in and not necessarily about who's right, who's wrong, or anything like that. And there is some, luck is the wrong word there, but it's your upbringing that depends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I always had questions like that because we were weren't a lot of Jews in our neighborhood. I mean, we all sort of sporadically lived around and gathered at synagogue every Friday. But a lot of my friends were not Jewish. So I always had questioned my folks by the time I hit about 7 or 8. I was like, because they told me I was adopted when I was quite young. I think I was 6 or something. And I asked them, I said, well, are we following the right God? Are we all these other guys are following this guy named Jesus. I don't know what this is all about. So we had those conversations. That's pretty young.
Interesting. I feel like I did not have those conversations with my parents because I think when I didn't really think about that stuff until I was maybe in middle school, 7th grade, 8th grade. And by the time, and all of my friends were not Jain, but we didn't really talk about religion. It wasn't until high school I even really thought about it much. And when I started thinking about it, it's also the same time I began questioning it. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things, it was, for better or for worse, it was one of those things I had to figure out on my own because I didn't have anyone to walk me through it. And there weren't really resources online to walk through it either. So I got lucky that the resources I found, maybe the dude in the basement websites, they made sense in the sense that it wasn't weird for me to think about it. And I didn't get much backlash because of it.
Okay, so, that's good. That's good. What would you say would be the first thing that you kind of made you think, this doesn't feel right or seem right to me? That kind of started the dominoes falling. Yeah,
that's a great question. And I'm trying to remember. You're making me go back a long time. And I'm trying to figure out what was it that tipped the scales for me? It may have been the idea that just, all these other people believe very clearly in all the things they believe in. And if 10 of us believe in 10 different gods, 10 different things, we can't all be right. Either 9 of us are wrong or 10 of us are wrong. And that's sort of, and it's that does make sense. That made sense to me when I was 13 or 14. It's oh yeah. So who's wrong here? And why, I guess part of it was well, I belong to a religion that no one's even heard of. Why do I think I'm right all of a sudden? If nothing else, I'm not even part of the popular religion.
So, honestly, I didn't even know what Jainism was until I was in my 30s, I think.
I think the weirdest thing for me, I think the first time I ever heard someone outside my family circle mention it as if they knew what it was might have been Sam Harris in The End of Faith, because he talks about how extremist religions are bad. But he's okay, I'll concede that if everyone was extremist Jain, we would actually not be so bad off. And I'm whoa, that was a weird way to mention Jainism out of nowhere in a good way in a book known for condemning religion in other forms.
Yes, I have a copy of it. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's one of his better ones on that sort of topic.
Personally. Yeah. It was interesting to see out of nowhere because I didn't know that was coming.
Right. Have you ever sat and chatted with Sam Harris?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough that partly because I've been doing this forever and I've had a chance to go to various conferences here and there. I haven't seen him, I don't think, in maybe a decade plus. I probably saw him soon after his book came out. And I doubt he remembers any of that conversation. I've emailed with him a couple times about extraneous stuff since then. But I've had a chance to meet a lot of those people. And at the time, it was more of at least with Sam and with Richard Dawkins, I was an atheist before I read any of their stuff. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't fanboying so much as, I liked the fact that you put these books out. And now I have my own issues with all of them for totally different reasons.
A ditto. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's okay, so there's that now. But I remember just meeting Dawkins for the first time, where I had read his science books and I loved them. And then The God Delusion came out, and I'm like, that didn't do anything for me. But that's the book everyone else had heard of first. And so getting a chance to meet him as a science writer who helped me understand evolution a lot more than I knew in the past. Like, that's why I was excited to meet him, for that reason. So, but yeah, I've been lucky that I've been able to meet those guys. And honestly, a lot of the YouTubers who are out there and other bloggers, I've gotten to like meet in real life over the years. And it's always exciting because I watch so many of them and I read so many of them now. And it's always cool to put a face to a name in person.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I went to the Faithless Forum last year.
Yeah.
To meet a lot of the people that are, that run these channels that I've been watching for years.
Yeah. And I'm so jealous of the fact that younger people now, or even people who are just new to atheism now, have so many, but like they have so many interesting, smart, intelligent people who are doing things that can connect, because everyone has their own style when they do it too.
Yeah.
And I'm so jealous that I didn't have any of that when I was becoming an atheist, because I know I would have loved having that at the time. So I appreciate it. And I try to like tell everyone, if I give a talk or anything like that, I strongly encourage anyone, even anyone talking on the sidebar right now or whatever, like, go start it. Go, if you want to do a podcast or YouTube and you think, well, I don't have the right equipment for it, or I don't know what to, it doesn't matter. Do it, start it. I promise you are going to find people who appreciate it and will reach out to you to tell you that too. Like, and I don't remember, Neil, how long you've been doing this, but like, it takes a while before you figure out your own rhythm to it. And by the time you do, and you're happy with what you're putting out there, hopefully you've kind of worked out your own kinks along the way. And it's like, okay, this is a product I'm proud of. I like that I'm able to provide this. And I can't remember a single person who has been doing it consistently for like a few months plus who hasn't heard from someone who said, thank you for doing it. I found your thing and it's awesome and it connects with me. It's like, that has happened 100% of the time with everyone who does it. So please start it.
You can include me in that, because you was amazing, dude. So
and Faithless Forum, I think that was like in Texas, right?
Yeah,
where they last year had all those YouTubers coming in and people like that. Like, that is an awesome opportunity, because again, it's not that any random viewer is going to know all of them or love all of them, but I like the fact that there's probably a couple people out there that you're like, I see them. They've influenced how I think. And they helped make this thing that is taboo in a lot of circles. They made it relatable and it made sense. And I think that way now. That's such a cool thing to be able to do. I've been lucky enough to be able to meet heroes is the wrong word, I guess, but like I've been able to meet those people who have helped.
You have respect for.
Yes. And it's such a cool thing every time. Like it's so cool when you get to pick their brains in person, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you, my experience last year when I went down there, and I was actually kind of shocked a little bit, you might say, because I got to meet like Drew,
McCoy?
Yeah, Drew McCoy.
Yeah. Good guy.
And Thomas and Matt and Art, Seth and Rationality Rules and Rachel Oates, and I've become really good friends with all of these people.
Yeah.
So, but to, to shake hands with, like, the first thing I did when I got to the hotel is I saw Matt Dillahunty sitting over there, and I'm like, that's one of the guys I got to shake his hand. So I went over there and I said, dude, I love your stuff. I'm going to be here for the Faithless Forum. Let's chat kind of thing. And I shook his hand. Then I went on Twitter. I was like, life goal achieved. Shook Matt Dillahunty's hand. And right away, he's like, aim higher. He replied to it, which I just thought was funny as hell.
Yes, that's awesome.
It was an opportunity to meet all these people. And then I found out that a lot of these people that I had all this respect for what they do, like putting themselves out there, because let's face it, sometimes this could be dangerous. Like a lot of us could end up with some backlash.
Right.
And when I hear them saying, listen, we really like what you're doing, and I'm like, whoa, really? You've watched myself? Oh yeah, we see if you do, you've got a great rapport with the people that you interview. You ask some good questions, and it'll get better as you go. And it clearly has. I mean, I watched back to some of my old ones.
I cringe at everything I've done in the past. Like, I cringe at stuff I wrote yesterday. I'm like, oh, why did I put it that way? Why did I say whatever? It'll hopefully you try to improve, you try to get better. But yeah, that's exactly the thing. And here's another thing about just atheism, because there is a stereotype, and a legit stereotype, that it's like one type of person, like who's an atheist, it's like an older white guy sort of thing. And
yeah.
Whatever, like every time. So one of the questions that I know I've been asked over the years, how do we change that? It's, if you want to do it, go freaking do it.
Yeah, more voices, better.
More voices, like, and so, hey, if you're a young woman, if you're a person of color who is interested in talking about this stuff, go freaking talk about it. Again, you mentioned it might be unsafe for some people. And certainly, no doubt, if you're like a young woman, oh my God, I can't even imagine what your inbox looks like, no matter who you are. Like, I don't want to be Rachel's email box or Twitter DMs or anything. You know what I mean? Like, but the fact that more people are willing to do it and they have the courage to do it, and they always will reach people that I could never reach and you could never reach. And it's like, well, good. How do we change that perception? You go put yourself out there. It's the same thing with politics too. I hear people like, I don't love this candidate. Yeah, they all suck because you're not running. So they're never going to be perfect unless you're the one running. So either you run or you deal with imperfection and deal with it.
Yep, because you got to remember too, even if you run, that means someone else has to deal with your imperfections.
Right.
I think that my favorite moment from being there, what's funny, they asked me to speak for the one that was supposed to be going on this year. Of course, they've delayed it till next year. Yeah. So I get to be actually on the panel next year.
Cool. Look at you.
I know, right? Because Drew and Thomas came to me and said, "Listen, we want you on the panel for next year." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what? Really? Have I made that much of an impact on you guys?" He goes, "Oh yeah.
That is awesome.
What you do." So,
congrats! I hope that happens next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, do you think there's a chance you might end up at one of these?
You know what? It's more of a thing. I love what they're doing. The issue for me is because I have family and I have kids and stuff, it's so hard to get away unless I can justify it. Like, well, I'm giving a lecture somewhere and they're covering those costs and stuff. It's really hard to justify leaving, even though I really want to see. I haven't met like most of the people you just named, some of the YouTube people. Like, I've known them on YouTube and I've never gotten a chance to meet them in person, some of them. Good people. It's like, oh, I want to. I just don't have a good excuse to tell like the family, hey, I'm going to leave for like 3 days. But man, I wish I could. That would be fun.
Yeah, it is. And, maybe wait for a few years when the kids are a little older.
Right? Yeah.
You might be able to get away. Because
easier to get away.
Guarantee you I'll be going to these Faithless Forums for as long as they keep having them.
I hope they keep doing it. Yeah. It's such a cool, again, it's such a neat thing when you get to meet people. I remember going to a conference when I was in college, and I don't think there was anyone speaking there that I had heard of in advance. Like, I didn't get to fanboy over anybody, but I do remember hearing a speaker who was like the keynote speaker at the time. It was Barry Lynn from Americans United for Separation of Church and State, who is he's now retired from there. But I didn't know him at the time, but I remember him talking about the evolution, creationism, intelligent design debate, which was going on at the time because there were still court battles over it. And hearing him talk about it, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, everything you're saying makes sense. And it was interesting. And I had never heard anybody say it like that, the way he was doing it, because he was an awesome speaker and he just made all of this make sense. And so it was, that in itself was like, oh my God, I need to keep doing this, because it's very cool to be surrounded by people when you don't have to watch your back in terms of what you're saying. You don't have to self-censor. So it's always really neat.
I don't think I have a self-censor switch, to be honest.
That's the good part of YouTube, right? Like, you don't have to censor yourself. But when you're in meet space with other people, it's, if I'm at a job or something with other normal people, it's like, oh, I got to watch what I say, because it's not my own little place where I can say whatever.
Have you ever slipped up and kind of went, I wish I could retract that?
I'm sure I have, and I'm trying not to think about it. Like, yeah, but like I taught at a public school for several years, and like I tried to make sure I was always good about self-censoring, because like that's not my position. I'd be pissed off if a religious person, accidentally slipped up and said stuff. So I tried to. The kids always knew because I'm pretty easy to Google, but I tried to make sure they never felt uncomfortable. Like I never let that get in the way of math class or whatever.
Sure.
I hope I didn't. I mean, yeah.
I'm sure
there were no
you would have heard.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. What made you want to start your blog?
The blog started, so I'm trying to think back. I started that college group, and we did that for a couple of years, and then I graduated. And I was working with some national organizations, like as a board member, and that was interesting because I was still an activist, I felt, in a way. Yeah. And there was a time when I had quit grad school, and I was trying to figure out what the hell to do with my life. And I ended up doing this experiment where I sold my soul on eBay, big quotation marks around all of that. And all it was is I went to church, a bunch of churches, and wrote about that experience. And after that was done, I was like, one of the things I did is I wrote about it on another guy's blog, and it was a cool experience. Like the comments were constructive if they didn't like what I said, and they were like good if they liked what I had to say. But it was awesome to write something because I'd never done that and get the feedback. And I'm like, I kind of want to keep that going, even though this experiment is over. So that's how the blog started. And man, my archives from like 2006 are still at friendlyatheist.com. Like you could see that old stuff. It's horrible. Like I cringe at stuff I wrote yesterday. You should see me cringing at stuff I wrote, 14 years ago.
We are our own worst critics, aren't we?
Yes. Oh, but it's legit bad. But like I started that, and it kind of morphed into a personal thing and my own life reflections on that stuff to a much more newsy thing along the years. And at some point, Patheos decided they wanted to start doing religious stuff, so I moved over there. But that's how the blog started. It was a chance to kind of just keep that conversation going, to talk about religion and what I was experiencing when I visited a bunch of churches, and then just talking about whatever was going on in the news. And PZ Myers was blogging at the time too, and I remember reading his stuff, and I'm like, I love the way he writes. I love the stuff he's writing. Yeah. And he'd been doing it for a while at that time too, and it was like, oh, well, that's a cool way to do it, because YouTube didn't exist at the time, so that wasn't an option, much less podcasting or anything. It's like, oh, if I want to talk and I want to reach people, Facebook wasn't around, or it was very young too. So it's like, oh, that seems like a cool way to write stuff and have people comment and read. And so that was the best option at the time.
Right on. When Facebook did come into being, did you jump on that right away or what?
As a platform, yeah, not as an atheist so much. Like I was in college when it, I think, came to my world, and it was just, oh, this is better than AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
It was better than MySpace.
I remember those MySpace. Oh,
yeah. So I don't think
have a fan page there.
Yeah, I don't think I was doing anything atheist specific on those things, but I jumped on it when I had the opportunity because it was exciting. I remember they're expanding to our college. It's like, oh, sweet. I can only be friends with people with an edu email address. Old school Facebook. Yeah.
Right. Now, a friend of mine and I are going to be starting our own call-in show. He's actually in the chat right now. He's the president of Canadian Atheists. His name's Randolph.
Okay.
And once every, I think, 4 episodes, we're going to have guests co-host with us.
Okay.
Like we're doing right now, where the person could pipe in and help us do the show. And it's going to be something similar along the lines of like a cross between the Atheist Experience and Truth Wanted with Objectively Dan, where we'll talk to you about whatever beliefs you had. And then figure out, so I might hit you up as come on as a guest host with us one time, which I think would be a lot of fun. Have you ever done anything like that in the past?
I'm sure I have at some point. But again, because most of what I do now is responding to news stories, it's actually rare that I end up talking to anybody about straight up their beliefs like Atheist Experience does. Like, I don't really get into any of those philosophical debates. I definitely don't seek them out. And so, like, I've gotten email requests over the years, like, hey, let's do a debate on God's existence or something. And I say no every single time, mostly because I'm like, if you want to do those debates, I feel like if I wanted to, I enjoy debating like that sort of formal debate. I love that. I just don't care about the topic. And so I always say no to all those, like, does God exist? I don't want to argue that with anybody. And I know Dillahunty does a million of them, and he's really good at it. I don't have that passion for it that he does. And so I never get into that with anybody. And there are always people who will message me and have you heard of this argument? Or how do you respond? I don't care. Don't respond to most of them.
In that aspect, you're more like an apatheist.
Apatheist, yeah. It's more of if people believe in God, are they wrong? Yeah, I think they're wrong. But again, in terms of what affects my life, it's what people do with that belief. And for the most part, my life is affected by what conservative Christians are doing in government. Yep. And so that tends to be where I spend all my time. They're always like, how come you don't spend more time I don't know, ripping apart the Quran or dealing with Muslims? Because Muslims don't impact my life.
Yep,
they're not in charge of stuff in the US. They don't run the government. So it's not a thing I focus on. It's not that I think they're right. It's that it's low priority when it comes to the stuff that I have to deal with.
For sure. We actually have a Muslim-based political party here in Canada that are trying to gain some ground.
And again, it's there's plenty of religious candidates, whether it's local government or statewide or federal, but as long as, I think someone on Twitter said that today, Nancy Pelosi said something about God in a speech. Yeah, but she's not legislating it. There's a difference. I don't care if she mentioned, Barack Obama mentioned God all the time, but there's a difference between how he did his public policy and his personal beliefs. So I don't care that they're religious. It's irrelevant. So if there's a political party, I'm more interested in, okay, well, what are they doing? I don't care if they're Muslim. What are they doing with it? And it's I agree with your policies. All right, fine. I voted for Christians all the time. I'm sure I will do it again. It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as it doesn't become a theocracy. Yeah,
exactly. And again, the politicians I support, they're all religious and it never matters.
Yeah, well, they all have I don't know if I would say that they're religious so much as like the fundamentalists or the evangelists.
Right.
But they do, I believe in God. Next question.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned this before. There is a Congressional Free Thought Caucus in the United States, in Congress. There's one openly humanist member of Congress out of 535 of them. He started it. There's 12 members of it. 11 of them are religious. But they support the idea. They support church-state separation. They support no discrimination against atheists, which you would think everyone should be on board with all of this, and yet whatever. But 11 of the 12 of them are religious, which just cracks me up. But yay, good. I hope there are more.
There's always one. There's always one.
Yeah.
Well, Hemant, I know you're on a bit of a schedule here. So what's your take on the whole the blasphemy law thing that's going on over, was it Scotland or Ireland?
Yeah, Scotland. It was weird. They have a blasphemy law on the books. It hasn't been used against anybody, but in theory, you could prosecute someone for blasphemy. It just never happens. So the question is, should you take it off the books? Because if you're a theocracy, you could say, yeah, we have a blasphemy law in Saudi Arabia, but look, Scotland has it. So don't blame us. And so they're doing a new hate crimes law. Update our hate crimes law, which is good, and they're getting rid of the blasphemy law, which also sounds good, but now it seems they're also adding in a section that says if you make threatening or offense is the wrong word, threatening or let's say offensive, offensive commentary against someone's religion and their gender or whatever, we could go after that. It's well, offense is in the eye of the beholder. You got to be very careful how you word this. Otherwise, you just created a new blasphemy law. What's the point? So I think they're still in a stage where they could reword it, so it's not too late yet. So you would hope, if you're actually trying to get rid of the blasphemy law, don't create a new one.
Yeah, don't kind of reword it so that it remains it remains in there. And you got to remember too, offense is mostly taken, not necessarily always given. right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, Canada's gone through some of this stuff too. Isn't there like a law in Canada where like wearing religious garb and all that stuff becomes an issue? And again, I don't care if people are religious. Let's not let them be religious. Let's just worry about how it affects politics and policy. If it doesn't hurt you, if it doesn't get in your way, whatever. I don't care.
My friend Pine Snake was saying that Scotland is actually a theocracy.
They may be. Like, there are some places that are technically run under like the Christian church or an Anglican church or what have you.
Church of England, I would think.
Yeah, and the irony is like those places tend to have the most atheists, whereas the United States does not have an established religion, and yet we're one of the most politically religious countries in the world.
And you ask most of the people to follow that, they can be, oh yeah, it's a Christian nation. No, dude, it's not a Christian nation.
Exactly.
Do you not have Andrew Seidel's book? Come on.
Right.
He was really fun to talk to too when I had him.
He's a blast. I've gotten a chance to talk to him in person a bunch of times. Like, nice guy in person too.
Excellent. Yeah, he's a super cool guy. Well, Hemant, I know you got to go do stuff because we're up to the 50-minute mark, I think now. Yeah. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me today, man. It was great to get to talk to you. And, they say you never want to meet your hero, like we were saying earlier, you never want to meet your heroes. Well, technically, you're one of those people that I admire very much for what you do. And just to actually sit and chat with you has been exciting and a pleasure for me. So
I appreciate it, Daniel. Thank you for doing what you do. Again, to everyone who's listening, there's no reason you can't start your own thing too. Start it, use it, do it. And if anyone has any questions, my contact information, I think, is below this somewhere.
Yep.
And just reach out to me anytime.
Yep. All the links are below there. I think the only one I didn't have was your Tumblr.
I don't know what it is. It's all good.
If anyone would like to, because I do know my friend Chris Mallard, who runs the Daily Atheist, and my friend Justin, who runs his own show, would probably love to have you as a guest on there sometime.
Reach out to me. It's all good. Anyone who's doing this.
All right. And if you guys want the email, just let me know and I'll pass it on to you.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Have a good night.
And thanks again, brother. Cheers. All right, you guys, we are going to do an after party. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. Anyone who would like to be involved, unfortunately, Hemant has some family stuff to take care of. So it'll just be us shooting the shit and whatnot. I can go for about an hour and a bit. So if you guys would like to hang out with me for about an hour and a bit, let me know. I'm going to take a 10-minute break, give or take. And I will send links to whoever would like to jump in. So we got room for 5 people. And if any more than that would like to hang out, that are more than 5 people, will swap people in and out, as I usually do. I'm starting to trip over my fucking words here, like crying out loud. Anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat as much as I did, and Hemant seems to have had a good time too. I talked to a Jeopardy champion, guys. That's pretty fucking cool. Anyways, so until next time, guys, like I always say at the end of these things, what I've added a little bit for the plague quarantining shit: be well, be safe, and above all, be kind. And like I always say, like the late great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.